Hey, this is Charles Onyet with IGN, and I'm checking out Tera, a new MMO from Bluehole and En Masse. And I'm just on the character select screen here going through a few of the race choices or species choices. You get standard humans, Castanic, which are sort of demon-like and have customizable horns up here. High elves, and Amon, a couple larger, bulkier type of selections here between the Amon and the Baraka. And then you get the goofier ones, Ellen and Papori. And Papori is probably the most standout class because they're little fuzzy animals and they're kind of chubby. So these are the super cute characters if you want to play a chipmunk with 2 swords, then you can do that. You pick a class on this screen. This runs through all the different classes. You've got ranged magic users, an archer, mystic, and I'm actually playing as a priest, which is the healer. There are the more rigid class structures here, so it's not like every class can do everything. These are the more upfront melee, tankish, damage-dealing classes up here between Slayer, Lancer, Warrior, and Berserker. Which I guess that's probably the bigger draw for the game, is to play as one of those guys, just because this is more of an action MMO. It plays much more like an action game than it does an MMO in the vein of something like World of Warcraft or Star Wars The Old Republic. I'll just go through a few of the presets here so you can see the Popori. You can play a really sad panda. He's got a tear above his eye. Poor guy. I don't even know how it got up there. That's a really unfortunately placed tear duct, if that's the case. And this cat with absolutely gigantic eyeballs. Entirely appropriate. So yeah, you could spend, around 200 hours or so if you really got into this game playing one of these guys, leveling them up. Or a dog, in case you're not a cat person. But the real star of this game is the gameplay, so I'm going to go back into the game with my selected character. I actually have a Castanic priest. Which is more about ranged casting, not so much about up-close fighting, so maybe that wasn't the best call considering the focus of the game on its action combat system, but it still actually works out pretty well. And even as a caster, I still have a lot of mobility and actually have to move around if I really want to fight effectively. So here's the priest. I'm just in the starting area. So nothing crazy has happened yet. I'm only level 8. I believe the cap is 60. This is the Island of Dawn, and the first thing you'll notice is that this game is really, really pretty. You can see this large structure up here with a whole bunch of rocks with mystical runes and etched all over them. Those are actually moving around up there. It's not just a static background. That's a place that you visit. There's a town at the bottom of it. You can look up at it at all times. You can see waterfalls all around in the distance. You can see moving runes up in the sky itself. Really, really cool world. Really pretty, really well detailed. And it seems to run okay, actually. I mean, I don't have an ultra high-end system running this, and it's still, basically maxed out, and it's running smoothly. There's not a lot of hitching or anything like that. So that's pretty cool. I don't know how it performs in groups or with a large number of players on screen or in dungeons or anything like that. But at least in this starting experience, pretty smooth so far. In terms of the combat, I'll go through some of the abilities I've unlocked. Naturally, I don't have everything unlocked for the priest because I'm still pretty early on. Oh, and one thing to note about the actual camera movement, I'm not holding down right mouse to turn the screen like this. It's just like that. That's the default setting, where if you move the mouse around, you will move your view. And then if you actually want to get the cursor up, you hit Alt, and that brings up this menu. So I have, in terms of attacks so far, I have a regenerate mana thing that I can use to get power back in case I've burned through a lot of spells. I have a restorative burst that creates a healing circle on the ground. There's a lot of this with the priest, and I can show that off right now. So wherever my cursor is pointing, I can trigger this spell, and there goes a healing circle, and then people can stand in this to regenerate health. Now, a lot of the heals, there are single target heals, or more targeted heals, but a lot of the heals are just AoE. A lot of attacks and everything in the game is AoE, which you'll see has a reason, because you're not really tab targeting creatures and fighting them individually. My AoE attack is this metamorphic blast that projects a cone of divine energy in front of me, which I can show off here fighting these guys. You can actually see their aggro warning pop up on top of them there, so you get more of a message. They're not super pissed at me right now, but if I do this, They're not going to like that. I just killed that guy. So now I'm just going to kind of corral them together. Actually, let me get a whole bunch of them together, just so this is a little more interesting. I'm kind of more powerful than they are, so this isn't really going to go badly. But yeah, so I'm just going to wait until they're in a big group, and then that wasn't the correct attack. But then I'm going to unleash the AoE attack, and you can see a few critical hits in there. And doing this kind of stuff is a little bit more fun than your standard just cookie cutter MMO encounter. There's a little more to it. There's a lot more movement involved. And though these guys are pretty easy to wipe out, in fact, most of the guys in the opening section of the game are pretty easy. It's not super challenging, but it gives you a sense of how this might evolve further into the game. Now, since these guys are bigger and are going to take a little bit more damage, I do have a couple dodges. Each class can either block or roll. I cannot do that as a priest, but I can jump backwards, which you'll see here. When I hit tab, I actually do this jump back. So that allows me to open up some distance between myself and the targets, and then use my, it's not an auto attack, but on my left click, I have equipped this, which I can just keep casting to do damage in a straight line. I also have another straight line attack, which is down here, Triple Nemesis, which I can actually chain up to 3 times once triggered. So I'll try it here. I'm just holding the 2 button. And there you go. You can see it fires 3 times there and has a short cooldown, so it's available again. One thing I did not show off there is Fiery Escape, which can work in groups. Basically what it does is decreases movement speed of targets and damages them, and also causes me to jump backwards. So I'm going to see if I can find a slightly more resilient target, such as this Spore Walker over here, and I'm going to capture his attention by hitting him with a piece of magic. And then I'm going to run up to him, and he's going to try and attack me, but I'm going to use my Fiery Escape. So you can see that did some extra damage, opened up some space, and you can also see that I'm not tab targeting him, and if I actually move out of the way of his whoops, I didn't that time. If I actually move out of the way of his attack, he won't hit me. So it plays more like an action game in that sense, in that I'm not sort of magically linked to damage just because I happen to enter into combat with one of these guys. So movement is very important, which is why I do have these dodges. I can also heal myself as a priest, which of course is important, although I don't really need it in the opening levels. But yeah, every enemy you fight basically has a different attack pattern. Usually there's a best time to dodge away. If I was playing a different class, I would have a different sort of evasive maneuver, whether it be a block or a roll or something like that. So you do get that variation between the different classes. And you do have enemies that tend to attack in large groups like that, where you have lesser enemies and stronger enemies. And you do have larger single targets that roam around, like this guy, who I think, yeah, he's not actually a quest goal. I'm going to go try and take care of some of my quest goals, which I believe are over in this village. In terms of what you can do on the interface, you can actually customize elements of the interface. I could move this part of the minimap around if I wanted to. I don't necessarily want to. I'm going to turn, actually I probably should have turned that off earlier because text chat is never a good thing in general chat, so just ignore that. If something terrible was said, I wasn't really paying attention. And I do have a couple items here. I have some potions and I have a bomb. And there's all sorts of achievements that you can accumulate by taking on tasks and things like that. So there is an achievement tracking system. You can enchant items, and I haven't gotten much into the crafting yet, but you can break down items that you have in your inventory. So let's see, I can go extract certain types of materials from items I've picked up. So if I want leather extraction, I can just go over here, take my sleeves of the first expedition, drop them in this thing, and extract, and you'll see this little bar progress. And once it's complete, I should have, there we go, I have some leather that I can use to craft armor if I wanted to. But again, I haven't really done much with the actual crafting system. You can see I haven't made any progress in any of these, but it is there, so that is an option. You'll also do a lot of gathering around the environments. There are nodes, such as this one should be. Yes, it is. So I can come over here, and very exciting, I can mine ore. I know that's never happened before in an MMO, but it's in this one. I was being sarcastic, that does happen quite a bit. So against these single targets, I can basically open up with a couple of these attacks to capture their attention. I can use my fiery escape to jump backwards. It looks like he actually has a ranged attack, so that's not necessarily as easy to dodge for me since I don't have a lot of lateral movement, but I can avoid his sweeps like that. Figuring out the timing of each enemy, the style of their attacks, whether they roll forward or just do a short range punch like that, is important to survival. Ow. All right, well that, I don't know how to really avoid that one particularly well. There we go, and set him on fire again. And attack from a distance. I'm not particularly good with the aiming on this attack quite yet because you do have to be a little bit predictive about it if the enemy is running around. You know, thankfully a lot of the attacks are AoE, so in case it's a little too difficult to figure out where exactly you're supposed to shoot this to actually make contact, then you can just do this a couple times until things settle down. Or that, which will do broader damage. Okay, so now that I've taken out that enemy, I'm actually going to see if I can turn in a quest to show off what the quest structures are like. They're pretty basic, kill and collect. In terms of how story is delivered, it's usually in small text boxes that any MMO veteran should be very used to seeing at this point. There are cutscenes from time to time though, so I don't know how long they're going to stick around, how frequently they'll trigger, but at least early on they happen fairly often as long as you're following along with the main storyline, though most of the ancillary stuff, this is actually a main story quest, but most of the ancillary stuff is just small text boxes like this. Okay, so now I have to go back to an outpost. But yeah, that's a lot of the story delivery, so not super exciting. Story isn't particularly gripping so far. Oh, there, that's what it looks like when enemies just spawn in. I mean, it's okay, I guess. It's certainly not on the focus of the game. The focus of the game is really about the combat, and the combat is actually a lot of fun, at least at early levels. A lot of nice variety, and I definitely am looking forward to trying out some of the sword and axe using classes as well to see what the non-caster experience is like. But even as a caster, with it feels very active, and I assume in a group there's going to be a big focus on running around the battlefield, and because you're not directly targeting people, at least for most of the heals, it should be pretty interesting because you're just going around laying down the healing field. Oop, I just did my mana regen. You're laying down the healing field for people in AoE, so something like that. And now I'm just going to round up a whole bunch of guys before I sign off here for a second, just to do a larger battle and see how I do at this. It's just all about avoiding attacks, staying mobile, and blasting AoEs when there's too many people around. There we go. The creatures, yeah, at these early levels do seem pretty slow, which is why this may look pretty easy. This is opening sections of the game, so it can't really be expected that it would be too complicated, otherwise it would probably frustrate people a lot more than it needed to. But yeah, cool enemy designs, really nice animations, cool visuals throughout, and you know, some fun gameplay. Definitely some potential here. We're reviewing it on IGN, on IGN.com. The review won't be ready for a while because, as you know, MMOs are large games that take many, many hours, usually a couple of weeks, to review properly. So probably in about 3 weeks or so, there'll be a review on IGN. But in the meantime, you can look forward to more updates and things like that on IGN.com and IGN's YouTube page.